Sixth graders, we're going to talk about converting fractions to decimals and then decimals to percents. So we're going to talk about what percents are, okay? Percents are any number that is multiplied by 100. So for example, when you find your grade on an assignment, I usually write down how many you got right out of the total, and then that total, based on a decimal and then a percent, gives you the letter grade. So, for example, if you got 3 out of 4, correct? 3 divided by 4 is 0.75 as a decimal. And then when you multiply that by 100, you get the percent. So any number times 100 is the percent of that decimal. Okay? Now, 100% means all of it. And 1 times 100 is 100%. So if you're starting with the number 1, that means 100%. 1 times 100 is 100. But if somebody says 100%, it refers to all of whatever they're talking about. And then you can figure out that 50% means what? Half of it. That gives you an idea of how this, what this means in terms of a decimal. What do you think the decimal is of 50%?
I think it's 0.5.
0.5, right. And 0.5 times 100 would be 50. Okay? What would be the fraction of this? Of 0.5? How do you read 0.5 as a number? 5/10. Now, how do you write that as a fraction in simplest form?
Wait, no, 1/2.
1/2, right. 50% is 1/2. So you already have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be doing today. Is going from percents to decimals, and decimals to fractions in simplest form, or starting with a fraction, getting the decimal, and then the percent by multiplying it by 100. Okay? Here's another one that I already talked about, 3/4. How do you find the decimal of 3/4? How do you find the decimal form of 3/4? Nate?
You divide it. You divide 4 divided by, no, 3 divided by 4.
Yeah, 3 divided by 4, just like you'd read it, top to bottom. 3 divided by 4. 3 goes inside, divided by 4. 4 goes into 30, 7 times, 28, remainder 2, bring down the 0, 4 goes into 20, 5 times. So it's 0.75. Then, to convert it to a percent, multiply by 100. Now, a shortcut way to multiply any decimal by 100 is just to move the decimal point over 2 places. You can multiply any decimal by 100 by just moving the decimal point over 2 places. And then writing the percent sign. Pretty cool, huh? So what would this be as a percent? If you move the decimal place over 2 places. This one. What would this be as a percent? If you move the decimal place over 2 places. Still waiting for some people to even look up here. What would this be, Josh? Yeah, good. 7.5%. We just moved the decimal place over 2 places. It goes between the 7 and the 5. So it's 7.5%. Cool, huh? Now, what if we were starting with a number like this, with a percent? What if we had to convert that to a decimal? What if we were starting with 7.5%? If we move the decimal place to the right 2 places to get to a percent, how would we get the decimal form? Instead of multiplying by 100, we would do the opposite of that. What's the opposite of multiplying by 100? Olivia? Dividing by 100. So go the opposite direction with the decimal point. Matthew? How would we go the opposite direction with the decimal point? What would this be as a decimal? Then? No.
Right there, yeah.
You would just move the decimal point over to the left. Well, no, because we'd have an empty space here. We'd have to put the 0.
I know, but when you, it'd be like 75,000.
Yeah, it'd be 75,000. Very good. Now, how would we put this into a fraction form? Rated?
You do 75,000 and then
You'd write
75.
75,000 because that's how you read this number.
Yeah, and then you simplify.
Then simplify it. How?
You could divide it by 25.
Divide it by 25. That's the greatest common factor. So 75 divided by 25 is what? 3. And 1,000 divided by 25. Peter?
100?
That would be divided by 10.
80?
So you're on the right track. But think about this. What's 100 divided by 25? 4.
Oh,
So
40.
good. 3/40ths. Is that in reduced, in simplest form? Yep. So we can go from a percent to a decimal. Okay, starting with a percent, what do you do? Move the decimal place to the left 2 places. Write the decimal form. Then read the decimal form. Write the fraction form and reduce it. Okay? Go to your assignment. The worksheet that I gave you. Okay. How about 72%? Let's do number 1 together. What would this be as a decimal? So follow the same pattern with the arrows. What would you do with moving the decimal the decimal point so that we can write it as a decimal. What do you do to write it as a decimal? Follow the same pattern as the one above. Trevor?
Move the decimal two places to the right.
Yeah, now, there is no decimal point listed though. What do we start with? Where is the decimal point? Even though it's not written.
Behind the two.
It's behind the 2 because this is a whole number percent. So it's just 72, which means the decimal is automatically behind the last digit. So we would move it to the left and then write what? Then what would you write, Hillary? What is this as a decimal then? Mhm.
0.72.
Good, 0.72, and read that as what number, Tate? How do you read this number?
Oh, 0 and 7,200.
Yeah, so how would we write that as a fraction?
Unsmith.
How do you write that as a fraction?
I do not know how to write it.
Say it again, 72.
Oh! 72, oh. So we would,
Say the word, say the number again, you just said it.
7,200.
Yeah, so how do you write 72 hundredths as a fraction?
You put the 72, you put a 100 at the bottom. You put a line.
They put 72.
You could write
I'm not smart.
72 over 100, right?
Yeah, I'm not too smart with this.
Okay, you're getting it. You're getting it, you're doing fine. Now, are both of these divisible by the same number? Matthew?
Yes.
Oh yeah, because 2.
Okay, good. So divide them both by 2. Maybe 4.
Yeah, maybe
4.
4.
So what's 100 divided by 4?
What do you say?
What?
4.
25. I wrote it wrong.
Just quarters.
Yep, just quarters, good. What's 72 divided by 4? Good. Very good. Is this in simplest form?
Yes.
How do you know?
Because you can go
Well, actually,
Olivia? Okay, but are there any other numbers that go into both? No. There's no other numbers that go into both of these numbers. Okay? So, you have charts to fill in, just like this. Going from percent to a decimal to a fraction, or from a fraction, 9/25ths, to a decimal, and then to a percent. What's 9/25ths? How do you find the decimal form? Nate?
You put 9 in the middle, so 9 in the refrigerator
Okay?
divided by 25.
Yep. 25 goes into 90. How many times?
3. Oh, sorry.
3 times. So it's 3. 75. Remainder 15. Bring down the 0. 25 goes into 150. 6 times. Remainder 0. So this is 0.36. What is that as a percent? Very good. Move the decimal place over 2 places to multiply by 100, and you get 36%. It's exactly what you're going to be practicing for today. Okay? So finish this worksheet.